everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Ben Wirz. I'm a partner with Brighteye. We're a venture capital fund based in Europe, investing in early-stage ed tech companies. We're here to do a panel about gaming, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Before we start, I just want to get a quick read on who's here. So if you don't mind raising your hand if you're an entrepreneur. Okay, awesome. A lot of entrepreneurs. Raise your hand if you're an educator. Okay, awesome. Raise your hand if you're a high muckety-muck in an education organization, but not an actual educator. Wow, there are a couple of those people too. Okay, anyway, all right, so great. So I think we have a sense. Anybody I missed? You want to shout out what you're doing? No, okay, great. So so the context for this is it's really a panel with some of the leading minds around using gaming to help people learn and using gamification as a technique to help people learn. I'm going to give you 5 quick bullet points because I am a data person around video games and learning, and then I will turn the rest of the panel over to these fine folks who actually know what they're doing. So, so video game usage is widespread. 60% of adults in the US play video games every day. 90+% of teenagers play video games, according to a Pew poll last year. And popular games scale really quickly. So Fortnite, 25% of teenagers have played Fortnite, which launched less than 2 years ago, right? So you can see these games spring up really quickly. Whereas video games are kind of a big business, as a $135 billion global market, educational games is relatively small, so $2 to $3 billion dollar market. That said, the educational gaming market is growing relatively quickly, so it's growing at 2x the rate of the gaming market. Growth in learning games traditionally was driven by just the idea that games can help students to address subjects that are kind of boring and or abstract, and the idea that putting educational content inside of a gaming mechanic can help drive retention. Those, I think, were a lot of the early ideas around creating learning games. Today, there's the idea that as games have become more social and more dynamic, games can help actually to build 21st century skills like critical thinking, collaboration, communication, creativity. So sort of it's becoming hotter, I guess, or at least more trendy. The potential has become more trendy. I think games are being used in schools a lot. So over half of teachers in a 2007 poll, so way back more than 10 years ago, were using games, digital games, to teach on a weekly basis. Most teachers found that it was particularly effective in helping to engage kids who otherwise had learning difficulties or weren't necessarily the top performers in the class, right? And so today, learning games are being used well outside the classroom, right? I think Gal will talk a bit about how it's being used even in a corporate context. It's even gotten so meta that there are now gamified training programs to learn how to play other video games. So you can find a virtual coach who will teach you how to play, League of Legends or other things, which is kind of amazing. That's it for me. I'm going to now just let the folks here talk specifically about, I'm not going to introduce them, but I'm just going to launch into how specifically are you using games or gamification to foster learning, and what is it about the game format or the gaming dynamic that really improves learning outcomes. And I'm going to start with Alex, because he's the furthest from me and didn't see it coming, dude. So
yeah, I really thought I had more time to think of my answer. Okay, so there are a couple major things within games that I think work really well. And so for us, we focus obviously on the engagement piece. That kind of comes by default if you have an okay game. But things that games do really well are they take away the fear of failure. So one of the interesting things about games, rather than something like school, is that in a game you actually expect to fail. The first time anybody here played Mario, you died, and you died in a bunch of different ways, but every single time you kind of slowly learned these different mechanics and then got better. And so they make it very, very safe to fail, and then they give you constant feedback along the way, and that allows you to kind of update your understanding of what it is that you're learning. And in the case of games, it's really just about game mechanics. With ed tech and games, it's about you can do that with the game itself, but you can also introduce that for 21st century skills. For us, we focus very heavily on like actual curriculum-aligned content, and we just give students a safe space to go in, learn, make mistakes, and get consistent feedback so that they can continue to progress.
Sorry, just can you describe just briefly what Prodigy Games is? So
I apologize. I thought we just weren't doing intros. So we make a math game for grades 1 through 8. It's kind of like Pokemon. Kids go in, create their very own character, and then learn us alongside their friends. As of right now, there's about 8 million kids playing on a monthly basis, all connecting and learning together.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. All right. I just incorporate that into the answer. I thought it was going to be much more smoother than that, but thanks, man. All right. So Deirdre.
Critical feedback. That's great.
Yeah, real time.
Hi, I'm Deirdre. I started a program at Microsoft about 4 years ago to bring the video game Minecraft into classrooms. We see it being used in K through 12 classrooms around the world for everything from social emotional learning, digital citizenship in the early grades up through even into higher ed. But coding has been an area that has been really interesting for people who play games. Often it starts out with observing, watching others play games, maybe on YouTube or Twitch, or just watching your friends play, getting into playing the game, moving along that journey into customizing the game, and then wanting to modify and build your own games. And so that progression for Minecraft players, we see that evolving into the classroom as well. And so there's a sort of natural progression to STEM and coding. But we also see a lot of things that Alex talks about of the students coming in, learners having confidence in this environment and in video games, having it be a place where they know things, they know more than their friends, they maybe know more than their teacher, and being able to combine that with a subject like fractions or chemistry that may be more challenging for them to get started with, creates this really nice opportunity. Teachers see more curiosity in the learning, so the students who are doing learning in a game environment where they are comfortable or maybe more curious, more confident in that environment. And so that's been something we've observed in classrooms and seen from teachers.
Great. Gal?
So my name is Gal. I'm from GameEffective with a single E. My name is Rimon with an I. But besides that, the reason why I'm here is to be next to you, because my kids heard that I will be with Minecraft on the same stage. It's amazing. And the reason why I started GameEffective is to help enterprise organizations to help their employees to meet their targets. So today, if we look at salespeople, corporate service people, technicians, medical reps, education or learning is broken. Do you know how much of the learning, what is the learning completion rate of training in corporate environment? More than 50% by raise of a hand? More than 30%? 20? 15? So it's around 4%, between 4 to 10%. So I guess that it's the same with kids. But so what we try to do is to take the actual performance activities of employees. For example, did you sell the Galaxy Note, the new Galaxy Note? If not, I'll train you how to do that. If yes, I'll train you maybe how to add attachments to the Galaxy Watch. So we are using training in order to encourage people and to train them to do the right things, to be ready to actually do their job and not just to have fun or to learn for specific skills. And I'll elaborate after that.
Okay, great. And Krishna?
Hi, my name is Krishna. I'm co-founder and CEO of Tynker. Tynker, we provide software and tools for students to learn computer programming. Most of our content is fully gamified. I think we kind of, reiterating the concept of three things that one is this whole concept of engagement, obviously everybody. The second one is the failure to fail and learn on your own. And also the most students, like first, our own experience when we first did the first year of our Tynker, we basically put out content that kids can just like as a tutorial learn, things like that, and we saw the engagement rates and completion rates. But by the time we brought in the game development and create content, we've seen the completion rates go up to 70%, from 20% to 70%. So there's something about games that students find it highly engaging that gives them this ability to explore and learn.
Cool. Okay. So Krishna, just to follow up on that, I mean, your products are being used by millions of consumers, at least tens of thousands of classrooms, I'm assuming. I don't know if that's about right, but like roughly,
sure,
yeah. how do you balance that, right? Because on the one hand, as a consumer product, you want people to use it. You don't want them to feel like it's part of a curriculum that's being forced on them. On the other hand, you want educators to like it and be able to incorporate it into learning goals that they have for their kids. And so how do you kind of balance that?
I think we look at it from the educator's perspective. How much time do they have really to teach each single student in the classroom?
Yeah.
So if you kind of create the content that's highly engaging, a lot of the learning happens most part by the students themselves.
Okay.
So then they can focus on the critical failures of the students and then really help them get to the next step of where they failed from. So I think from the gamification perspective, that's the kind of value add that brings to the classroom.
And in the US, is there a curriculum? I mean, are you conscious of aligning this with curriculums in the US?
We actually have 3 different groups of people that make the content. One is the game developers, which actually take a concept and design a game around it. And then we have educators who actually bring all the standards and the kind of content that the students have to learn.
Yeah.
And we mix that and build experiences that are applicable for both ends.
Okay.
But we never just do content for the sake of there's no efficacy to it or there are no learning outcomes in it.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you, but so Deirdre, I mean, how does that map to your experience? And I know Minecraft initially for a number of years was just a consumer entertainment. I mean, I think most people thought of it as just a game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in those early months and maybe even a year when I first started working on this project, I woke up every day thinking, I hope today is not the day that I ruin Minecraft, that I personally ruin Minecraft for the millions of players around the world. And it was something that I and the team at Mojang, the game studio that developed Minecraft, we really thought deeply about and talked about, because there is something that's so empowering about going into this open world, a place where players feel like there are no rules and they can sort of make up and create their own experience, which is different from the typical classroom experience where you're following a guided path under the watchful eye of your teacher. And so we were careful in developing the game and creating the classroom experiences to maintain that open world feeling and that feeling of there are no rules and I'm creating my own journey. And so it was quite a balance to do that while also providing teachers the comfort that they were in control of the classroom experience. In terms of building content and curriculum, we take a similar approach to what Krishna just described with Tynker, and bringing together educators and what we know about pedagogy and learning progression, and combining that with game designers and game developers who know through creating really amazing games that we all play and we fail at and we keep coming back at. Combining those two together really creates these magical learning experiences that the student or the learner gets deeply immersed in and curious about. And I've really seen educators light up and become inspired by kids not wanting to leave at the end of the class period or finishing the assignment and wanting to know what's next. And that's, I think that's really that magic that can happen when you bring that together.
Cool. And sorry, just to follow up, are you developing, curriculum-based content as well, or is that?
We started with maybe a little bit too of an idealistic vision of saying, let's just follow the learning. There's a teacher named Marianne that I've worked with from New Jersey, and she talks about follow the learning. It's this idea that, the great educators are going to take this as another tool or another platform in their class, and they're just going to see what happens with it. The reality is that, most of our educators are so busy and so taxed. And so we have invested in a couple areas. One is in collecting lesson plans from educators in the classroom and providing those in a shared platform for others to use and build on. We've also invested in some partnerships with organizations that already have lesson plans and content and created sort of Minecraft extensions for those. Those are often very natural extensions. So taking what maybe would be an end of unit project that you could do, creating a poster or a video and doing that in a Minecraft experience that the students would then present out to the class.
Okay, cool. Alex?
Yeah, so I guess maybe jumping on that, we actually started at the other end of the spectrum where our goal has always been to, there's a few high level transforming education, and the fundamental idea was that you don't get to do that unless you're actively used within the existing education system. So we came at this from, we're going to be curriculum aligned from day one. We're going to make sure that things like assessments are built into the product. And so what that ended up doing from an engagement standpoint is that we had to be very specific about the features that we were and were not willing to do, because I think one of the, we'll say, fallacies within this space is that it is very different to be a B2C versus a B2B. There are certain things that are very different. And so, for example, within our product, it would probably be extremely engaging for students if we had an open, safe chat. So some way for them to talk to their friends. We don't, by the way. But The reason we didn't do that was because it works for kids, but it didn't work for teachers. Teachers didn't want a way for their children to spend a lot of time in the classroom talking to their friends. But students and teachers both want engagement. So for social, we do things like semi-competitive, we have a leader system, and there's ways for every student, regardless of their level, to spend enough time to win within that environment. And so you just have to be a little bit more specific about which features you bother building. And then the way that you end up doing that is just through a lot of user interviews, a lot of great discovery work where you have to go into classrooms, you have to figure out which educators are using it most effectively, and then use that to then kind of build a path for all the other ones to kind of get to the point where you want them to be, which is actively using it to inform their instruction. So it really is about understanding your users.
But you guys do have significant sort of parent consumers, or is that a significant part of your business, is to market to parents, or not really? Is it mostly educate? Yeah.
Yeah. So the way the model works is all the education content's free, and then there's an optional parent upgrade that only unlocks extra game content. So there is that direct-to-parent component.
Okay.
But I mean, we've been around for almost 8 years, and 6.5 of those really didn't have much of a parent presence.
I see. Okay, so that's
it was all about kind of that teacher-student balance, and a lot of the other stuff kind of follows from there, where the parent's happy, if their teacher's happy, if the student's happy, you kind of get it for free in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, cool. That's really interesting. All right, so we're going to come back to kind of how the products have evolved. I think that's a really kind of interesting dynamic to explore. I do want to give Gal a chance to talk, because I think, the broader, what I started out by saying is, hey, games have really jumped the shark in the sense that, the idea of gamification has gone everywhere, right? It's really incorporated into everything from like advertising to, productivity tools to, everything. So I know that's part of what you guys do, and so it'd be helpful to just understand in a corporate context, how do you sell gamification, right? Like, what is it that and how do you differentiate what you're doing versus other kind of productivity tools?
Right. So first, everyone understands that in corporate learning is broken, and the reason is because we have a goldfish attention span, right? We have like 3-4 seconds between a meeting to the next one, and we would like to by the way, we don't want to learn, right? We want to do our job, go home. Now, on the other hand, I need to be ready for, I was in the Israeli Air Force, and our goal was that the fighter plane would be ready. Right. The fighter pilot would be ready for the mission, right? In order to be ready, we need to understand what is the mission. So everything should be adaptive. So I have a goal, right? The goal would be to sell a watch, to provide it in Microsoft, by the way, 20,000 employees, to provide great service to your customers, right? One of our customers. Now, in order to do that, they need to learn if there is a new version of Windows or Minecraft, right? To provide the service, you need to learn. In order to do that, you need, to create a micro-learning approach. So up to 2-3 minutes of interaction with a learning activity, not more than that. Second thing, it should be repeatable. There is a forgetting curve. If I teach you one thing today, you will forget. If I teach it like 3, 4, 5 times during the month, I guess that you will remember. And the adaptive approach would be that all the time we will understand based on the learning activities, engagement activities, and if you have also the actual production, the results, the actual performance data, you can also create a different journey for each one of the users. Okay. So if I would like to train people to learn how to use Minecraft, I will capture the information, for example, how many creatures I killed or how many worlds I developed, right? This would be the production, the impact, and then I go backward and I will train you based on the gaps. Because you are a builder, I'll train you how to build. I'm a killer, train me how to kill. By the way, I was a programmer in the Air Force, not
a killer.
Thanks for that analogy.
A programmer that wants to kill things.
That's awesome. Okay, no, and actually, as I mentioned at the outset, there are actually gamified experiences now to train people how to play video games, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. They'll give you a quest, in the training program. They'll give you points in the training program to do stuff in the game, which I think is fascinating. I guess more generally, it'd be interesting to hear, maybe Krishna, starting with you. What is a change that you've made in the product? I mean, you mentioned that when you went from kind of non-gamified to gamified, the conversion rate, the learning rate really increased. The completion rate. Sorry, thank you. There was a big change. What is one change you've made in the product in the last 12 months that has had a real impact on learning, and how is that informing your roadmap going forward?
I think the one experiment we've done, I don't know if is that very early on, after one year of our existence of Tynker, we've learned this engagement is not high in the product, because just asking kids to learn coding is not something meaningful for them.
Yeah.
So one day we decided to just get 5 game developers who don't know coding, and we brought them in and said, get trained and see how you create experiences that can create engagement for kids to learn coding. I think that's the biggest jump for the company. And then we bought these 5 game developers which didn't know how to code. I mean, obviously they know how to design games. So they first learned Tynker and they started designing things, and that kind of changed the whole trajectory of how we saw engagement. So from there on, everything we do, basically we write a script. So every experience, so for example, say we want to teach some some logic to kids. Then we put that problem, and then game developers come in and say, what is that game that teaches the logic?
Okay.
And they'll write the script, and they'll create different characters to it, and all sorts of massive production goes in.
Okay.
And then we'll put it out in the kids and test whether there's engagement and people are actually understanding that this is what it works like. So I would say, I think that loop that we've learned, that you have to have this whole in story as well as the gameplay inside the learning experience, and we tend to accommodate that. Even for things like programming hardware, we kind of gamify that and kind of help kids kind of experiment and learn. Okay. So I don't know if I answered your question exactly the way.
No, I mean, I think that what you're saying is the major sort of innovation in the business happened fairly early on when you brought game developers and put them at the heart of it, and that's something that you've continued to build around.
Yeah, and also we gave them a lot of times what happens if you drive it from pedagogy, I need to do this, and it becomes sometimes hyper boring for kids, students. So you might want to step back and say, what is the right balance in this? So that's kind of we strive to get a balance of those two.
Okay. And Deirdre, you said you were trying not to mess up the product in your first year there, but is there a particular kind of product change that you guys have made recently, or maybe not so recently, that really kind of pointed the way forward?
Yeah, so after we survived that first year, which was great, we had introduced Minecraft really as a tool for teaching and learning across the K-12 curriculum, and I truly believe there are huge opportunities in all subjects, and we see teachers using it really creatively, and even students bringing it to their teachers and saying, hey, I want to use Minecraft here in my math class or my language arts class or Spanish second language learning. One thing that we've done in the last year has been to do more of a focus on coding, and that's from a couple of perspectives. One, I think it's such a powerful platform for encouraging students to get started with coding, to break down the barriers, to reach students who maybe wouldn't think that coding or STEM is a path for them, so to reach girls, to reach other students who just aren't exposed to that as a career. It also, Minecraft lends itself really well to breaking things down into small components. The game is about breaking and placing blocks, and so to connect that to a coding learning progression. So to do that, we've introduced a much easier experience within the game, so that you can write code to place and break blocks, do the things that a player would normally do. Players love that, because generally in Minecraft you're placing one block at a time, and to suddenly be able to write code to program building a house and then building a village creates a fun game loop, but it also inspires curiosity about how can I do this faster? And suddenly students proactively going out and learning how to write loops. We partnered with Krishna and the Tynker team on that experience as well, and so bringing the Learn to Code tutorials and lessons into what we're doing. And then also wrap that with professional development for educators. So recognizing that educators are often reluctant, they don't have computer science training, and they're being expected to introduce STEM into the classrooms. And so taking Minecraft, it's something we learned with Hour of Code, where students are really excited to use Minecraft in the classroom, and if we connect that with a scenario like coding, it's much easier for the educator to guide that journey without necessarily being at the front and the expert on it.
Yeah.
I'll add one point to this. So obviously you mentioned that most of the adults and kids are playing games. So we know that Minecraft was played by 48, I don't know, I don't want to throw wrong numbers, millions of kids.
Right.
So we've actually brought a bunch of kids and say, what in Minecraft do you want to do that, the kind of things that you're just buying, from other developers.
Right.
So they gave us like 15 things. So we mapped that 15 things with the intersection of coding and said, okay, these are the kind of coding experiences we can use. And next thing you know is like millions of kids are creating these, mods and experiences that, together we were able to kind of put that. So I think there is something about not just gamifying, but also using games and ability to modify a game and inject like learning will also be a good way to think about gamification.
Yeah.
So that we tend to think and say we just need to gamify content, but you can also like have a hobby of playing games. Why not like use it to kind of learn as well?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, it gives them a concrete. It's not just like I'm learning to code for the sake of coding. There's like a house or something that I want at the end of that, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think we're at such an interesting point. Like we're not that far today from a one-room schoolhouse with a textbook, and you come in and do English for 45 minutes. I think we're just at such a point where we need to accelerate that learning process and provide more access to differentiated experiences, more learning delivered at the point where the student needs it. And so I think tools and platforms like these are really in such a great position to do that, to take student interest, to take subjects and topics that we can be pretty agile in how we deliver that content, much more so than traditional curriculum and textbook. And so we have just a huge opportunity to follow where the students already are, to deliver content more quickly in a more agile way and adapt it to where they need to be challenged and where they're interested.
Cool. Alex, I'm tempted to take you off script for a second and just ask. I mean, because you're developing math games, which I don't know, for folks who maybe aren't that strong in math, or for students who isn't that forte, it may be harder to figure out what the dynamic is to get them engaged. And if you're starting from a place of, hey, we want to help teachers teach kids, basically, or we want, and so. How do you think about that? How do you think about getting kids to want to learn for their own sake, as opposed to just trying to fill in boxes? Yeah.
Sure. So we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but one of the things that really great games do, like really addictive games. So I played World of Warcraft quite a bit through high school and university. Wasted way too much time on it. But then when we graduated and I started thinking about it, what they end up doing is they give you short, medium, and long-term goals that you keep coming back to. Yeah. And so really, really great games do that immediately. You're dropped into a story. There's somebody you pretty quickly is your antagonist. Right. So it gives you this forum where you have these goals originally for us, especially for students that are a little bit more scared of math or aren't quite as confident. Their goals are originally about the game. So it's, I want to be the highest level in my class, right. Or I just want to be a higher level than my best friend. And it's like, it can be competitive, it can be I want to complete this zone. But over time, what we've been trying to do, and I guess to your question on one of the things that we've learned, has been around, we built this big gaming world, and we specifically made it so that it was modular, so that we could plug and play any education content we wanted. And we did that so that we could adapt based on what the child was doing, but keep the actual game experience the same and make sure that that was optimal. What we found is that by making it modular, we also kind of didn't review that intersection. And so it was really important for us to go back and say, how can the game and education content complement one another? Right. And by that, what I'm meaning is that now when we look at the algorithm in the background, we look at where they are in the game, and then we figure out how hard do we want to push them. Okay. So for example, if they're at the end of a battle and it's really important that they get that question right, or they'll lose if they get it wrong, right. Is that the right time to push them?
Right, right.
And I mean, the answer is maybe, depending on that child, realistically.
Right. So you guys, do you build different profiles for the child
Well, that's where we're going now. And so it ends up kind of leading into our focus now is we get about 600 million questions answered per month. Right. And we're using that to try to figure out what is and is not working, and really deeply trying to understand what causes kids to stick with the product or churn out. And things like, obvious things like consistently failing are problematic. But a mix of struggling and then succeeding is actually totally fine. They'll stick with it the exact same, and actually longer than students that just succeed the entire way because it gets boring. Right. And so one of the things within education that can be kind of frustrating is the idea of disguising the education, where they're viewed as, again, things that are separate, like an oil and water scenario, where that's not true. Part of what makes games fun is that you you try, you fail, you learn. And what things like Tynker do and what Prodigy try to do is just make that learning process a little bit more visible.
Yeah.
Because when you're learning how to develop or write any piece of software for the first time, it's not that obvious. As soon as you move beyond like the hello world scenario, you don't get a lot of feedback. And so one of the things that game-based learning does is it keeps giving you that feedback so that you know you're tangibly better than you were a week ago or a month ago. And then that's part of what drives kids to take ownership over their learning. But then you do need to take it a step further and say, this is where you were, here's where you are now, and you kind of see this path for them.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would ask me now, what are the risks of gamification? Because I heard a lot of things that could be dangerous, right? Competition could be very dangerous, especially with kids. And if they volunteer to play a game, right, for fun, it's okay. They can, compete, win, lose, and so on. But if they're doing it for learning, definitely kids. But I look at adults. It's the same. If I lose, I will disconnect because I would like to experience this losing feeling. And what we try to do, and this is definitely a double-edged sword. What we try to do is first put you in a position that you are the hero of your own game.
Right.
So it might have like social aspects to it, but first I'm going to be the winner or loser against benchmarks that maybe I will put, like my target, the things that people like me, and so on. And then. So,
but in a corporate context, I mean, potentially there's like compensation on the line. There's like real. I mean, it's not just about a pretend house, right? Like I'm making more money or less money based on like the results of these games. And so, to some degree, not that money motivates everybody, but there's a real tangible kind of benefit. I mean, how do you think about that?
So first, again, like it's all about to be adaptive. So different people need different experiences. Right. There are people that are highly motivated by competition. There are people that are highly motivated by group work and so on. So I'm very proud, I return to the previous question, that we created a micro-segmentation engine like in marketing. So we try first to understand your profile, your behavioral profile. If you are highly competitive, you're individual, you're a group, networker, and so on. We will have different experiences for everyone, and then you can choose, or the system will choose for you, and then it will work on your behavioral profile.
Okay.
This is very important.
So that's interesting. So it's not actually that dissimilar from what Alex was describing. It's the idea is in order to make a game enjoyable, you actually have to know a fair amount about the person.
Yeah, because if you play GTA, you would like to kill. If you play Minecraft, you would like to build, but you made a choice. Right. If you're in a classroom, you can, somebody else, maybe the educator can make the choices for you, and then the system should be smart enough to, incorporate everything.
Okay. We don't have too much time left, and I have
7.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
7.
7 minutes. Okay, so yeah, thanks. I've been using my watch. Okay, so I want to hit one question fairly briefly, just for the three of you who are just focusing on the education space, and then I'm going to ask a more open-ended question about your advice for entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs here. So just maybe following on what Gal was saying, I know some educators and some parents are concerned just about screen time in general, about exposure to video games, and whether that's as a whole a good or bad thing. My own view is it's a nuanced question, but I'm sure
it's
that's
only one bigger screen.
That's right. Yeah, as long as the screen is small.
We love the screens.
So maybe Deirdre, starting with you, I'm sure Microsoft has thought about this a lot, and so how do you think about the issue of kind of screen time, being bad or good, and how do you moderate that?
Yeah, I mean, as a parent, it's certainly something I think about as well. What we've found in practice in bringing Minecraft in the classroom is it's not the student sitting for a class period or 40 minutes in the computer, with in front of the screen. Often the activities, one of the great activities at the beginning of a school year is to ask the students to build either their classroom or their school in Minecraft. With that activity, they're often going out of the classroom and they're measuring, they're using estimation, they're working together and planning, collaborating. They'll often create like paper maps or diagrams, blueprints for what they're going to build. So the actual time in the game spent building, interacting with the screen is a relatively small part of the overall project. Similarly, any of these projects are often presenting out to the class. So it's part of the core experience is in Minecraft and benefits from that Minecraft gameplay and the interaction, the curiosity, but a lot of the overall experience is actually outside, interacting with other students and learners outside of the game.
Okay, Alex, maybe. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? Because math is something that parents and teachers are constantly want their kids to do, but then there is the screen issue. I mean, how do you think about that?
So for us, I think part of the concern around screen time comes from the idea that it's wasted time. Like if you're just sitting there playing something like an Angry Birds, fun game, not necessarily making fun of it, but it's not teaching you a whole lot necessarily.
Physics, maybe. Physics of birds.
That is... Sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But that's one of the core concerns. And so there's obviously a limit. You don't want your children to be on a screen for 8 hours a day.
Right.
But what we really focus on is making sure that screen time is extremely well used. Yeah. And so that's why one of the big pieces of feedback we get is that this is significantly better than something like a YouTube, where if they're going to choose to use an iPad, whatever, I would prefer that they use Prodigy, and then it's on us to make sure that time is extremely well spent, making sure that they understand what their children are learning so that they can make a more informed decision about do they need more or less time on the product.
Okay.
I have a 10-year-old who uses Prodigy, and as a parent, I'd love to see her on that. She tends to be a more resistant learner, I guess, in math, and so it's great to me to see that she's curious and wanting to spend time there.
Thanks.
Yeah, Krishna, how do you think about it?
I think we think about it as creative time. So our kids are learning, are they creating?
Okay.
As long as we can prove that that's the kind of time they spend in the learning outcomes as well as the creations where parents can actually see. So that's how we define that. Obviously, coding requires screen, and so of course they can do some offline activities. The other things we proactively do in classrooms and at home is that they can go off and play other kids' creations. So we actually time them out after some time and put them back into, if you played 3 times somebody else's game, you have to go do something else that's learning experience. Okay. Then you get more session-based play time. Yeah. So kind of use that screen time as a motivating factor for them to go learn more. Some of the things we explain, we're not perfect, but those are the things that we put in place that helps cycle of reinforcement, and then obviously parents have full control as to from a timing perspective that we provide those as well.
And just a quick follow-up question, I don't know if you have this answer, but do you guys measure like the percentage of time that's creative or learning versus just entertaining?
We measure like tons, every aspect of what they're spending. So that is all there for parents and teachers to see. Okay. So they kind of judge like what is, and we also recommend them how best, we say do once a week, an hour, or 2 hours max. That's kind of recommendations on what we do. Okay, cool. That's great.
All right, now is your time to be sage advice givers to the folks out in the audience. I don't know, Gal, if you want to start, maybe just I think you started this journey 6 years ago, you told me, and so if you were kind of in the first or second year of your journey, what do you wish somebody had told you way back when?
Stay in the corporate world. No, kidding. So I think read 3 times the Lean Startup. There is an approach that first you need to create something very quickly, MVP, it's minimal viable product. Take it to the market immediately. If it's need fixes with bugs and so on, take it to the market, limited market of course. Measure everything and then take decisions and do this type of iterations all the time, like every few weeks. And after 1 year, you will have a great product.
Great. Krishna?
I would say that if I were to tell myself every day, I focus on why does Tynker exist? Why should it exist on a daily basis? Right. Is it bringing change? And how we bring that change? And if that resonates, then there's a company to it.
Okay, so just keep asking the big question every day. Yeah. All right. Awesome, Deirdre.
I think similar to and building on that is really embrace what your differentiation is and what you're good at. For Minecraft, we're a super blocky game, and so if we tried to be something else, if we tried to lock it down to meet what teachers thought that they wanted, we would have ruined the student experience. If we tried to make it very high fidelity, we would have lost that that really very accessible, easy to get started aspect of it. So, despite a lot of feedback that you'll get from everyone else, figure out how you're differentiated and really embrace that.
Okay. Alex, last word.
Sure. So one thing, if you read the Lean Startup, please read other books as well. There's books like Inspired. You don't actually have to develop to test ideas. So there's a lot around discovery-based thinking. You just read some of those as well. Marty Kagan's a very good guy to follow. In terms of what I would recommend, be very confident that you want to spend your life in education, because it takes a really long time to understand a lot of the nuance. We spent a lot of time just at the student and teacher level, and now we're moving up to the principal and math coach level, and we're learning all over again, and this is just in North America. We want to do this on a global scale, so it's another 20, 30 years that I'm looking at. I'm very excited about that, but that may not be the right path for everybody.
Awesome. I think we're...
Yeah,
what do we
We're going up.
Oh, all right. So great. So thanks everybody for coming. Good. Yeah. All right.